Welcome back to Indy Ball Nation, and for the second video in a row, it is report card day, this time dealing with the Frontier League, which you might be thinking, Atlantic League was last time. This is more timely to the first quarter. You're right. Yeah, How about it? Every once in a while. Almost on time with something. Indy Ball Nation for you. We're going to get this thing started. We're going to go division by division, and in each division, we're going to go worst to best, right? Why? Because the divisions are still a little convoluted and hard to remember, so we're going to try to keep it structured that way, easier to track. And worst to best is because let's end on a positive. I always feel bad being negative at the end of something. No, we're just going to go with it. Cool? All right, kids, let's do some report cards. And we're going to start with the Evansville Otters, who are 14-17. They're 4 games back in the Midwest Central Division. After following up a 2023 Championship Series appearance with a real backslide in 2024, which kind of caught a lot of people off guard, Evansville just really has not had the type of start that they really would have hoped for. Now, it's worth pointing out, since a tough start, they're 12-11 in their last 23 games, 6-4 in their last 10. So the bleeding has been stopped. Evansville has sort of hit a level here, and now it's going to see where they're going from there. Keenan Taylor, Graham Brown, JT Benson, and LJ Jones are all holding up their end of the bargain in the lineup. Unfortunately, the rest of the lineup outside of those 4, their batting average is just above 200 with 5 home runs and 123 strikeouts in 375 at-bats. That's nearly a third of their at-bats ending in strikeouts. On the mound, it's Braden Scott, it's Parker Brahms, it's Adrian Montilva, keeping the Otters in these games with Nick McAuliffe and Griff Hughes, as well as Alex Valdez, who I've seen a couple times now leading their bullpen. Like the offense, this team struggles for, the pitching staff rather, struggles for depth behind these sort of headliners. The team has lost all but 2 road games so far, which is crazy. That's a wild home road split. That speaks to some other issues, which we can maybe dig into another video, but at least the division is not too far gone right now, and they're only 2 games out of the wild card. So with those saving graces tacked on there, give them a C- for now with some building blocks for more and some improvement as this year goes on. Let's talk about the Florence Yalls. I don't want to go super long on all these. There's 18 teams. Crazy. By the way, it just seems insane to have 18 teams, but I understand it. I appreciate it. It's just like, I can't go. We're not doing, This can't be an all-day affair. It's report cards. We got class to get back to. Let's talk Florence Yalls. They are 15-7. They are 3.5 games back in the Midwest Central. After losing their first 5 series, Florence has stabilized a bit as they move into June, very much like Evansville. Got kind of solid here. They're now playing above 500 ball over the last 20 games. We can see the sort of yin and yang of this team. Their offense led by Armani Smith, TJ Reeves, Michael Quinones, and about 5 other guys who like their weapons in the right circumstance, day to day. That's in their typical lineup. They're making the most of their hitter-friendly ballpark. On the other side, the pitching is struggling as usual in this environment. Beyond, for the most part, Webster and Villalobos, the Florence rotation just has not really found any consistency. The bullpen doesn't have a single sub-4 ERA to pull from right now. It's good to see Florence looking competitive after a long stretch of difficult seasons. Good for Chad Rhodes getting it cooking now. I understand the difficulties of their environment, so I'm going to give them a C+ for this first quarter. That's a tentative C+, by the way. That could backslide pretty quick, so keep an eye. The Washington Wild Things. Washington Wild Things are 18-13. They are 2 games up in the Midwest Central Division. The Wild Things are trying to make their way back to the Frontier League Championship Series, and I'm sure they'd agree that this has been a bit of a frustrating start for them. Since winning 4 straight in mid-May, the team really hasn't been able to string together more than 2 wins in a row over the next month until just this past weekend against Joliet, where they swept a doubleheader and took the Sunday game. The rotation is a bit in flux, but it has done well to set up what has been a fairly impressive bullpen to this point. LaGrange, Caulfield, Wilder, they're among a number of good hitters in the lineup. That's really been good. The offense has kind of had trouble finding consistency, but they've, in my opinion at least, kind of outperformed their own shortcomings so far. So that means it could be prime for a bit of a backslide, but I could also see a world where they just solidify and keep it moving. So not a red flag fully, but something to watch. They could just use more production from guys like Andrew Check. That's been a bummer to see him struggling so far. Despite some of these issues, Washington, they're in prime position for another playoff run. So I'm going to give them a B, and we'll call it sort of a low-end B for the first quarter here. And now moving along to Lake Erie. They're 16-15. The Crushers are 2 games back in the Midwest Central. After narrowly making the playoffs last season, Lake Erie has kind of showed up meaning business in 2025. I've been impressed. The Crushers offense has shown significant improvement, thanks in part to key contributions from these additions. They got Dario Gomez, Joey Wright, Derek Vegas, that's all good pickups there, doing their job. Lake Erie's pitching staff isn't quite as overpowering as last season. The bullpen's very good, especially comes into like later inning, higher leverage options. However, the rotation is just still struggling outside of like the dominant start to the year from Anthony Escobar, some solid work from Jack Eisenbarger. He's looked good. The bullpen construction's good. The offense is doing its job. So solid start, noticeable areas of improvement. Lake Erie is, I would say, probably one or two starting pitchers short of actually being a serious threat in the Midwest right now. Easy to say. I feel like everyone's one or two starting pitchers short, but it's within reach. I'm giving them a B as well, but more of a high-end B based on where the expectations were for this team and what they've done here to sort of back it up. All right, transitioning to the West Division. Let's start with Windy City, the Thunderbolts. They're 8-25. They're 14 games back in the division. Well, they're scoring the second least runs in the league, and they're allowing the second most runs in the league. So that's pretty much how you end up with a sub 250 win percentage getting dropped on the table here. Kyle Harbison, he's handled business despite missing some games here and there. Dakota Katowski's raking at the dish. Michael Sandel, he's been delivering. David Mayberry's been solid. On the mound, I really like Trevin Reynolds, Caleb Rydell. They've been good. They've been basically all we could have hoped for, honestly, from that bullpen. Aaron Evers, he's been good anchoring the rotation. Yeah, if it sounds like I'm being really positive about a team that's struggling, it's because like the team's dealing with a lot. The Bobby Jenks illness is a terrible situation. Interim manager in his first real gig, that's brutal. Everything is made so much more difficult by this. So I'm going to lay off for the time being, but that doesn't change the grade, which is just a D+. Maybe even did change it, if I'm honest with you. So a D+ for Windy City. Transitioning over to a new face in the league, the Mississippi Mud Monsters. First report card. Welcome to the party. They are 15-18, 7 games back in the Midwest West Division. While the offense has struggled, the team's pitching has been solid enough to at least help them outpace the usual low expectations for new teams. I mean, 15-18 isn't great, but I think we can agree that on the standard of a new Frontier League team, it's not bad. It's pretty good, actually. Outside of Kyle Booker, Travis Holt, and Braylon Skinner, the rest of the Mud Monsters lineup offensively has been below league average to this point, and that is not a lot of weapons to pull from day in, day out. The rotation has had some struggles as well, with all the starters beside Brandon Mitchell either approaching or well above a 5 ERA, so that's a tenuous situation. Luckily, big outings from the bullpen, which stars Michael Reed, Chris Barraza, Gage Bim. Got to learn that one better. I've heard it said multiple times, and it just doesn't stick. What is wrong with me? And then Tyree Thompson. They have kept Mississippi in the mix. The team has not gained a lot of momentum at any point. They're not going on runs, but they are outperforming their fellow first-year team in Down East, which we'll talk to later. That's a good sign. I worry about the lack of success from the rotation that can tire out a bullpen, make the late run of the season very difficult, and the lack of depth in the lineup is concerning. So I would say this could go sideways from here, but for the first quarter, we're going to give them a C, a respectable C for a new team in the league. Moving on to Joliet, the Slammers. They're 16-16. They're 5.5 games back in the Midwest West. They're going 13-0 since a slow start, so that's good. Joliet's done well on the road. They've done well on the road to a bounce-back season. I got it. Handwritten notes for a sketchy decision over here. Mike Pinto's second year with the team. Seems like year one was kind of a build year. Year two, there's a little bit of get up and go to it, which is nice. Braylon Marine, he is the main offensive weapon right now. He's so good, got an 846 OPS. But the rest of the lineup is not really grabbing headlines, but they're still at least doing enough to avoid any prolonged slumps, keeping themselves into games, so that's really what you're looking for. On the mound, the rotation pieces of CJ Blowers, Gunnar Kynes, Zach Westcott, eating innings, and Aiden McAvoy has been really handling things well, handing things off to a bullpen that's done a good job finding sort of their main reliable arms that they can go to in any situation. So this looks like a pitching staff that can do well and function well long term, but Joliet's going to need to improve both on the mound and at the plate if they want to actually threaten to be likely playoff contenders in the Midwest right now. That said, B- for the large improvement despite having more to do. I'll be looking for continued progress if we want to kind of keep this grade going, but for now, B-. Very few things to complain about there. Now to Gateway, 19-13. They're 2.5 games out of the West Division lead over in the Midwest. Gateway, they seem to be heating up lately. They were recently swept in 2 weird doubleheaders, but other than that, they've been kind of cooking. The expectations for the Grizzlies are high. With the goal usually seems to be focused around playoff success, not even just get to the playoffs. So that's kind of where their head's at and where the expectations are. If the season ended today, Gateway would be in the playoffs, but they would be doing so making the wild card. They do have 3.5 games of cushion, which isn't bad, but not comfortable, Gateway typically is a strong offensive team, but the offense regressed last year, which was kind of surprising. It was not what we expected, while the pitching improved, which, okay, interesting. This year, the pitching has held steady to those improvements, but the offense has also returned to form. So that's basically all you could really be looking for if you're Gateway on that front. It's exactly what you're hoping to see. Mark Schallenberger, Gabe Holt, Victor Castillo have been really good. Edwin Mateo and DJ Stewart are absolutely crushing. Pitching's been strong. The rotation really has only showed a few cracks here and there. The bullpen has multiple high leverage options, so it seems like a Gateway team that could make a run. I'm sure they would like to add a little more, get a little more consistency going, maybe compete for the division lead, not just a wild card. But for now, first quarter, giving them a B+ for sort of maintaining something around the standard and actually improving a bit. And now, wrapping up the division, it's the Schaumburg Boomers. They're 22-11, 2.5 games up in the Midwest West. Now, they're 9-9 against what I would consider playoff contenders, but Schaumburg has been handling the hell out of teams that they should be beating. They're going 13-2 against the rest of the league outside of those sort of playoff contenders. At the plate, it's been more than just like Anthony Calarco, Bren Spillane, Kyle Fitzgerald, Sam Kaczynski, and Christian Fedko, because this lineup, most nights, can roll 10 batters deep with guys who are producing above league average. That sort of depth is preventing any sort of team-wide slumps from really setting in. It's promising as far as keeping this momentum going throughout the whole year. On the mound, Cole Cook and Eric Turner are leading the rotation. Cook has been working pretty deep into games, which is nice, helping out the bullpen a bunch. Quinlan Wiley, he hasn't allowed a run in his first 12 innings, but the rotation relying on him long-term makes me a little nervous, but we'll see where that goes. He's a new face. The Boomers may need to add it for a bit of a playoff push, but that's true as well for probably the bullpen. So a little more rotation help, a little more bullpen help, and isn't this describing every Indy ball team? I know it. I'm aware. I hear myself. But there's really no shutdown arms who, like, I would feel comfortable with the high leverage with this team other than, like, Aaron Glickstein, maybe Mitch White. So that would be the thing that you probably have to figure out. But for now, I mean, what else could you ask for? I'm giving them an A-, just a little more room to improve, but it's been a really, really good start to the year. Frustrating for Gateway, who's had a solid start, but find themselves behind. All right, moving over to the Atlantic, and we're going to start in the North Division, the Atlantic. We're talking the Ottawa Titans, who are 11-21. They're 15.5 games out of the division lead. Woof. While the pitching is holding its own, kind of around league average, there really isn't a standout anywhere on the staff besides Billy Doobie in the bullpen, who's been looking really good. On the other side, the offense has been terrible. There's no way to sugarcoat that. I feel bad, but it is what it is. The current lineup is slashing 208, 324, 293. What? Can't be doing that. That's like an 86 OPS plus for those of you keeping track of the nerd numbers. Not much else to say, really. It's surprising from a team that was in the playoffs last season and was comfortably above 500. The Titans are really just falling short in like every part of the game. If I could elaborate, there is more to say, but I'm not going to sit here and dunk on them while they're down. It just is what it is. We can do a deep dive into it another time, but that's not what this is about. Giving out report cards. And the report card grade for this one is a D+. Saved somewhat by the fact that they're kind of somehow only 5 games out of a wild card spot in what has been a pretty squishy Atlantic conference so far. Sticking up in Canada here, Trois-Rivières, as I've been corrected. Whatever. Trois-Rivières Aigles. 12-21. They're 15 games back in the Atlantic North Division. Sort of the flip of Ottawa, if I'm honest about it. The offense is league average. They have some guys like Brandon Hilton, John Montez, Chris Burgess, Justin Farmer stands out who can really make life difficult for you some nights. However, the pitching staff is what's a real mess. Now, they do play in a hitter-friendly environment, right? So we're going to give them a bit of benefit of the doubt, but they're much better at home than on the road. So, like, what is happening here? Like, Trois-Rivières is never normal. So far, it's really just been Mike Hansel who's worth relying on this staff. They're adding pieces like Christian Scafidi and Nick Del Prado to the bullpen, but they haven't really had a sub-4 ERA guy in the pen until recently. Already had 5 stretches or 3 or more losses in a row in their first like 30-something games. So this difference between this team and Ottawa really is only that the expectations for Trois-Rivières were already low, which is why I'm going to at least bump them up to a C- for the first quarter. But they gotta figure that out, man. I don't know what's going on there. You'd like to be like, oh, here's the issue. I don't know, man. There's some problems cooking. Heading a little bit south now to what many teams would consider a northern neighbor, but south of Canada at least. And that's the Brockton Rocks. 15-17. They're 11.5 games back in the Atlantic North. And talk about another team with low expectations, by the way. Brockton had me so worried when this thing started. They go 1-6 to open the year. They did not look good, but they've done a good job. They've been beating up the teams that are below them. They've been getting wins like where they can the rest of the way. The rotation's been inconsistent. The bullpen's lacking dominant arms, but the staff on the whole is kind of a cohesive mix that does enough to keep the team in games at least and give the offense a shot. On the offensive side, Emmanuel Rosario, Tommy Kretzler, Evan Giordano, Derek Bender, they've all been doing a great job in the lineup. Austin White and Trey Seula Hull, if I got it right, if I remember it right. Tough one. Could have just done a check, but I didn't. They're sort of supporting roles in the lineup, looking good. Then all in all, it's been a successful start to the season, honestly. 15-17 isn't super impressive, but they still have a lot to go. But last year was really hard to watch at times. They got very lucky having Jersey and Sussex in their division struggling. So this is a good improvement. Shout out to Jared Edmondson for the noticeable improvement in season 2. C+ for Brockton for the first quarter. Keeping it moving. 2 teams left in the division. We got the Tri-City Valley Cats. Talk about a team with a tough break when it comes to the division. They're 20-11, and somehow they're 6 games back in the Atlantic North. While Jake Reinisch and Ian Walters have been leading like an all-around really strong lineup for the Valley Cats, it is really, in my opinion, the pitching stealing the show here. Arlo Marinchak, Steven Still, Michael Manzano, Connor Wilford stands out. They've all really been delivering in this rotation. Out in the bullpen, there's a real lack of standout stars, which is kind of a concern, but just about everyone out there can be a good option. You just kind of have to watch your matchups. Tri-City's got a bad break with Quebec being in their division so good this year, but the team's next 9 games are all against, I think it's 6 against Down East, 3 against Ottawa. There's a real chance there to at least make up some ground on that 6-game deficit, now that at least Quebec is in the middle of like 2.5 weeks of winning in a row, where what else would Tri-City going to do? They are currently holding a 5.5 game lead for a playoff spot. We really can't ask much more of them. I do think maybe a little more on the pitching side, but for now, I mean, it's an A-. It looks good. Tri-City's playing ball. And wrapping up the Atlantic North, it is Quebec. They're 27-6. They're leading the division by 6 games. Quebec is dangerous. They're good at everything. They have the best offense. Their lineup typically has 8 hitters above league average as far as production goes. Additionally, they have the best starting pitching. The entire starting rotation is almost the entire bullpen is comprised of pitchers who are better than league average. The team just ended their 15-game win streak. Let me try to find a difficulty. I mean, they're currently 7-2 against teams above 500. Against playoff teams, they're 4-2. I guess the offense occasionally going quiet is kind of a problem. I mean, they've only scored 20 runs in their past 6-game stretch last week. That's weird. I might need to do a deeper dive to figure out what the cause is there. But at first glance, it really is just one of those things where it's the ebb and flow of the game. It's random. Things are just not happening in the order you need them in order to get runs across, which is bound to happen when you're a team that's hitting well. I mean, sometimes it's a roll of the dice. Sometimes your good hitting doesn't line up in the way that creates runs. So I think that's what it is. But it could be wrong. We'll see if it keeps going to this week. Then maybe we'll have a different conversation here. But for now, I mean, what else can I say? It's an A+, obviously, Quebec. Get out of here. Little scamp. Look at you. New Jersey Jackals. Let's get this Atlantic Conference East Division rolling. The Jackals are 11-21. They are 11.5 games back in the division. This team probably would have had a better grade without, I cannot erase from my mind watching them get swept by Down East this weekend, who came in, I think dropped 11 in a row, and then came in and swept Jersey. Brutal. Expectations were not high for this team. Their 11-18 record was still kind of more palatable before what I can only refer to this weekend as a recent episode. The Jackals rotation has been leaning on Alex Barker, Sonny Fauci, Francis Ferguson. I think Fauci just hit the injured list, but I think it's 7 days, so hopefully he'll be back soon. But the back end of the rotation and the bullpen is mostly comprised of guys who are letting up over half a run per inning. Not going to get it done. At the plate, the lineup is really thin. Doesn't really seem well suited to that weird ballpark they have at Hinchliffe. Not really taking advantage of that, and I think they're probably leaving some runs on the table, but that's the roster they have. Ryan Ford and Bryson Parks are representing themselves well, but the depth just is not there behind them. The most concerning thing for me is that the Jackals kind of had an easy schedule. Like, it's going to get more difficult. They have not had many games against good teams so far. And it feels like they've wasted that. And I think this could get worse, certainly before it gets better. I think it's going to get much worse. So things are only going to get tougher. They kind of punted on some opportunities here early in the year. It's a D+ from New Jersey. That sucks to say, but it is the fact. Moving on to Down East, they're 11-20. They're 11 games back in the Atlantic League. I did it again. The Atlantic Conference East Division. Look, Frontier League, you invited that. I don't know what to tell you. Thank God for that Jackals series and the Jackals just being a mess, because that 11-game losing streak was hard to watch from Down East. Moving that out with a sweep, that's nice. Gets them out of the division basement, flips them with Jersey. That hurts for Jersey, but hey, good for Down East. The offense has not been impressive. But there have been bright spots, okay? Emmanuel Tapia, he's been pretty much all that they could have hoped for. He's leading the team with 9 home runs, leading it by he might have more than double everyone else's, or anybody else, rather. Yasel Pino, he has settled into the league really well. Steve DiTomaso, he's the league's, or the team's best hitter by average. Beyond Jalen Smith and Cole Hill, the rest of the lineup has kind of struggled to stay afloat. On the pitching end of things, the rotation is lacking an ERA below the high 4s right now. That's brutal. In the bullpen, Brandon Kaminer, he has been consistently good, strikes out a ton of batters. He's fun to watch, but there's just a lack of regular threats beyond that. A lot of building left to do here, and when the team is bad, it's really bad. It's hard to watch. But Down East is 11-9 without that recent slide. If you cut the 11-game losing streak to 11-9, of course you can't. The 11 losses happened. But when they're not sort of in mid-free fall, they can actually be a fairly solid, productive team. That's good to see from a first-year team. I'm giving them a C- for the first quarter. The New York Boulders, over in the East Division again, they're 7 games back. They're 15-16. After a 2-6 start, the Boulders have had, I'll say, moments where it looked like things were coming together, but they can't keep it consistent, which is frustrating. Here's what I mean. They won 2 against Quebec, then they lost 2 of 3 to Ottawa. What? Then they grabbed a win against Trois-Rivières and then lost 3 straight. Then they won 6 out of 7, and then they lost 5 out of 7. So just can't get and keep momentum going. The pitching staff is struggling. They're walking way too many batters. They're not getting enough strikeouts. Like, walks can be palatable if you're also getting Ks, but they're just not. And I think they're walking 5 per 9. I think they're striking out 7.5 per 9. That's not the ratio you need. Mason Olson and Garrett Cooper are pitching well in the rotation, but the rest of the rotation is just struggling. Tyler Vale and Parker Kruglowicz, they lead the bullpen, but there's a definite lack of depth, and that has really already become an issue in several games. The lineup has also had the headlining duo of the Ryans, Ryan McCoy and Ryan Vogel, team after my own heart. Fortunately for the Boulders, they're still able to put up another 4 or 5 above average hitters in the lineup most nights, so they can get a pretty consistent, at least, push offensively going. New York needs to bounce back. They wasted last season's hot start. The schedule picked up on them, and they ended up in trouble. While the sub-500 record and depth issues are pretty concerning, New York is kind of keeping itself around the playoff cut line. The team is in a good position in case it's Sussex County's time to collapse this season, which it could be. I'm giving them a B-, but that is a low B. That could slip very fast. So B- is fine. You're capable of more, but you're also capable of much less. So we'll keep an eye on you, New York. Finally, let's wrap this thing up. It's the Sussex County Miners. They're 23-10, 7 games up in the Atlantic East. This has been a very good start for a team with low expectations going into the season. How is this happening? Well, they're beating the hell out of bad teams. Another one of those. So far, they're 15-3 against Trois-Rivières, Brockton, New Jersey, Windy City, and Ottawa. They've done this with a starting rotation full of sub-4 ERAs. Is that because they're that good, or is it because their competition's bad? Tough to tell. We're going to give them benefit of the doubt for the first quarter, though. Mike Reagan, Jackson Balzan, Rob Hensey, Kellen Brothers, and Tyler Thornton are all handling their damn business. Dan Kuritzis, Billy Parsons, they're leading the bullpen. The rest of the relief options are just not really high leverage types. Yes, Mackie Backstrom, Sean Roby, and Gabriel Maciel are getting after it, but the entire lineup is kind of pretty dangerous so far. If there's a concern from me, it's that the team is 8-7 against the sort of quote-unquote good teams in the league right now. That puts them in definite danger of being this team's New York Boulders, with the second half fall off as the schedule picks up. If they can't win consistently as that schedule gets tougher, this could be an ugly collapse. But still, the team is way ahead of where they're supposed to be. There are concerns, but when you think about the expectations, I got to go ahead and give them an A. It's been a Good start to the year, and they've been delivering. So if we were to recap going backwards here, I got the Sussex County Miners getting an A. I have the New York Boulders with a B minus, then a C minus for the Down East Bird Dogs, a D plus for the New Jersey Jackals. Next division over, we got the A plus for Quebec, which feels obvious, an A minus for the Tri-City Valley Cats, a C plus for our friends in Brockton, C minus for Trois-Rivières, a D plus for Ottawa, and then switching over to the Midwest, an A minus for Schaumburg, a B plus for Gateway, a B minus for Joliet, C for Mississippi, and a D plus for Windy City. And then finally, in our last division, it is a B for Lake Erie, a B for Washington, a C plus for Florence, a C minus for Evansville. And that wraps up your Midwest Central. And that wraps up report cards for quarter one of the Frontier League. How do you think your team did? Did I grade them fairly? Am I wrong? Am I dumb? It's possible. It's all possible. But the grades are the grades. I'll tell you, shouldn't put me in charge of the classroom, baby. I don't have the degree for this. Is this podcast good?